are you? And where are you going? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello. Not sure why the bumper is not working, but anyway, good evening, or good afternoon, good evening. I'm Kevin Bell, I'm your host, and we're at Jiggers' place for the first episode of 2026. It's New Year's Day, and so we're, kicking things off. You can maybe already, for those of you who are regular watchers of the show, you can already tell there's something a little bit different. Normally I show up in a bow tie and vest for this show, and I decided that I'm going to dress things up a little bit differently. So, I got some new clothes from a wonderful store called 11T. All of their clothes are handmade in Italy, and I've gotten to know some of the people there, Emily and Michelle and Arthur, and so sometimes I just drop by to chat with them and just kind of enjoy an hour of great conversation. But the clothes there are just beautiful. They're very, very comfortable, and I think they look rather smart. So. For now, starting this year at Jiggers' place, rather than having more of a business-oriented attire, I'm going to have more of a kind of after-work attire, but I'll still be wearing a tie. So, for those of you who remember the episode this past year on why men should wear a tie. So, welcome to Jiggers' place, and I hope that you had wonderful holidays, that you had a happy Christmas, and that you were able to spend time with family and friends, and that this new year, 2026, is off to a good start. I exchanged messages with a fairly long-term friend of mine, someone I met when I was in the Navy, who's unfortunately been very sick the last several years. And he told me that his holiday miracle was he's been waiting for kidneys so he could do a kidney transplant, and a donor has been identified, and so surgery is set for next month. So, thank God, thank goodness that my friend Zach has had that happen in his life. And, perhaps you've experienced something of a similar nature, or maybe not quite so dramatic. But I wish you only the best. Good health and prosperity is my typical greeting for the secular New Year. So our first cocktail, I toyed with the idea of dispensing with the cocktail for today. Because last night I spent New Year's Eve alone. I won't tell you why, because I want to keep things upbeat. But I had some champagne with dinner, and I've got part of the bottle of champagne left in my refrigerator. And look, you know me and champagne, right? We have a very close relationship. So, but I thought, no, this is cocktails, and so. The cocktail that I came up with for today's show is called Lessons in a Glass. I'm actually going to spend this New Year's Day and kind of a special edition of Jiggers' place, looking back on the shows from last year and talking a little bit about what they mean and how we might use the different things we talked about in 2025 as we go forward into 2026. So this is a rye-based cocktail. I have my carafe here. This is actually bullet rye. I decanted into this very lovely decanter. I actually keep this in my library so that if I'm in my library reading and I want to have a little tipple, my favorite everyday rye is there. And then let's see. Next, I've got some fino sherry. This is Tio Pepe Palomino fino. This happens to be kosher. There's lots of great sherries out there. The recipe, if you're on my email list, you get the recipes. It calls for Amaro Montenegro. I don't have any Amaro Montenegro in my bar, despite having a pretty broad range of bitter liqueurs. So I'm going to use, I think this is pronounced Becherovka. This is a Czech bitter liqueur. Did a little research and found that this is, fairly similar to a Montenegro bitters. I have another one from Czechoslovakia. I have one from Croatia. I toyed with those different ones, but anyway, I got this when I was in Israel. This is a kosher version of Becherovka. And then let's see, next is some maple syrup. I think I used this a couple of weeks ago. This is pure maple syrup, Adirondack family farms that were founded in 1940. And then several bitters. This is Elemakule Tiki bitters by Bittermens. Bittermens is my favorite bitters. They have all kinds of different ones, a total of 3, 6, 9, 11, and 4, 15. I've got 15 different Bittermens bitters. I think I have all of them. Aside from the fact that they're kosher, which is nice for me, they have just all kinds of different expressions, and they're fun to sort of experiment with. So we're going to use some Elemakule Tiki bitters from Bittermens, and also some, I think it's pronounced Xocolatl Mole bitters. And then just a dash of orange bitters. This is Stirring's Blood Orange bitters. For my money, this is the best orange bitters out there. Okay, so I went ahead and pre-poured 2 ounces of rye. So we're going to put this in a mixing glass. We already have ice in there. And then next we want a 1/2 ounce of fino sherry. And let's see, yeah, here we go. Okay, so there's our sherry. And just a 1/4 ounce of the bitters. Okay, and if you get the recipes, there's usually an explanation as to what the cocktail's about, why the different ingredients are there. So I'm not going to go into that here. And then a 1/3 ounce of maple syrup, I think it is. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And now the various bitters. So we're going to do 2 dashes of the Elemakule. 1, 2. And 1 dash of the Xocolatl Mole. I think in retrospect, maybe I should have shook those up, but you live and you learn. And then just a dash of the orange bitters, the Stirring's Blood Orange bitters. Okay, now we're going to stir this for about 25 to 30 seconds. You see in the recipe there. And I always mention this in case there's somebody new watching. We stir it not just to mix the ingredients, but to melt some of the ice. The melting ice opens up the various flavors. So we're mixing, we're chilling it down, and we're also opening up the flavors. And if you can see the mixing glass, you can see it's nice and frosty on the outside. It's got kind of a lovely golden color. That's due to the the rye and the maple syrup. And that's probably about 25 to 30 seconds. And we've got our strainer. Okay, and we've got our double rocks glass, courtesy in this case of Juniper Square. It's a investment software company. And there we go. And then I'm going to garnish it with some charred rosemary. I'm just going to kind of slip that in there. It'll, over time, the alcohol will leach out some of the flavor of the rosemary. And there you go. Isn't that beautiful with the little rosemary sprig in there? Lots of layers in there because of all the different flavors. And as you sip it, you smell the rosemary, which is very, very nice. Okay, I will see you over on the couch. So here we are. It's like I said before, the first day of 2026. I got my spherical pillow to sit on my lap. And so it's nice to be with you. It's nice to start the new year with you and, experience some of this together. So, last year was the second season of Jiggers' Place, but it was the first full season. I started the show kind of mid-season in 2023, and it originally was just kind of a lark. So the original Way to Wow show, I would convert my living room, in which I'm sitting right now, into what amounted to a TV studio, and we would shoot multiple episodes in one day, so anywhere from 4 to 8 episodes. The first iteration of the show, it was a 30-minute show, and I did 2 guest segments for each show, and what I found was, and then for each guest, I had also a guest bartender who created a cocktail themed to the topic about which I was going to be speaking with my guest. So we had some absolutely amazing cocktails by some very creative bartenders. Most of them came courtesy of a bar that I used to frequent called Lost Property. I think, unfortunately, it closed as a result of the pandemic. But in any event, Jiggers' Place was a way to bring back the kind of the gestalt of the original Way to Wow shows. So it was impractical to bring in a full crew and do the very I think the original show, we had a crew of about 8 or 9 people. It was a lot of fun. I got to work with my longtime producing partner and our longtime producing partner, Rick, and our longtime director of photography, Steve. And then we had some younger, newer people who were a part of the groups. And like I said, it was a lot of fun. But it was impractical. And so that's why I changed this format in order to continue the show after a hiatus in 2021. And so, but I always miss the cocktails and the kind of atmosphere that created. And so that's what brought Jiggers' Place back. And the other thing about the original Way to Wow show was it didn't focus solely on
financial and professional matters, it focused on all three of the three pillars of attainment, all 9 of the realms within them, and so Jiggers' place is where we can talk about the other 8 realms that I don't talk about in my other 3 shows. So Trust and Estates Weekly, Business Lessons from the Military, and People Making Money are all dealing with, as their names state, different aspects of business and professional matters. And so here we don't talk about all those things. We talk about books, relationships, values, and you'll see a few other things. And so that's why I wanted to do this kind of retrospective. I love the smell of rosemary. So I went through all the episodes that I did last year, and I created a list. You can see it here. And I realized they could be grouped into essentially 4 groups. So one has to do with how we conduct ourselves, how we dress, our likes and dislikes, those kind of things. The second category has to do with our connections societally. So kind of the things outside of us. They tend to be more broadly values oriented, as opposed to the first category, which is personal values. And then there's this third category, which is on books. And then there's a fourth category that is admittedly short, or it only has 3 items in it. And it has to do with just things that I thought it would be fun to discuss with you. And so I'm going to cover those last because those are the most fun. Okay, so I started out last year, Cocktails in the New Year, talking about the 3 keys to living a physically healthy life: sleep, diet, and exercise. So if we can be reasonably self-disciplined about getting good sleep, eating well, and exercising periodically, we'll live a pretty healthy life, right? And the thing is, I'm not a big fan of making New Year's resolutions. What I am a big fan of is returning to sort of basic principles, simple disciplines that will make our lives better, okay? And they typically don't require, an expensive gym membership or a big revolution in our life. It's really about just developing some very simple habits in our day-to-day life, and then building on those habits, right? So one dietary habit might be, instead of eating, processed foods every day, maybe we restrict it to only 4 or 5 days a week. So maybe we don't eat processed foods on the weekends because we're not having to work, hopefully. And so we have more time to be, preparing our meals, that kind of thing. That's the kind of sort of return to discipline that I think is best for New Year's. Okay, and then talked about cocktail. I'm going to leave off the cocktail parts. Everyone starts with cocktails, right? So I talked about relationships, and my central theme there was the most important thing in a relationship is the relationship itself. While good communication in a relationship, it can help can help keep the relationship in good shape, it is the relationship itself on which we have to focus. Okay? So good communication will not overcome a conflict in core values. It may help define it and help us understand that's what's going on, but rarely is it going to overcome it because we typically don't change our core values. Next, I talked about etiquette, and the core idea of etiquette, it's not about a whole bunch of rules. It's about how we make life more enjoyable for the people with whom we interact. That's the essence of etiquette. Okay. And I talked about language inflation, where we use words, they become overused. So whether it's awesome or crises, those I think were the two biggest examples I gave. Creating the habit of using words that actually mean what it is we want to say will help us communicate better, rather than letting ourselves fall prey to an inflated language that typically is designed to upset other people without really giving them any opportunity to do anything about it. Okay. Then I also talked about behaving like a man. And I think this is important for both men and women, because I think women have lost out as men have lost the central aspect of what makes a man, which is not power or dominance. It's the pursuit of virtue. So if you're a single woman looking for a husband, I encourage you to look for a man whose life is devoted to the pursuit of virtue. Okay? Don't look for a virtuous man, because any man who would self-proclaim himself to be virtuous is not. Okay? But a man who strives to improve all aspects of himself, and in particular, the way in which he interacts with other people, he's a keeper. And men, this is the concept, the value to which we need to rededicate our lives, the pursuit of virtue. Okay. And then I talked about ties, which I mentioned already. Wearing a tie is connecting ourselves as men, connecting ourselves to, at this point, several centuries of manhood. It's a way to decorate ourselves that is largely male-centered. Okay? And it also says something about our willingness to restrain ourselves, that we put on a tie around our neck is perhaps metaphoric of the need for us to discipline ourselves. Okay? Then I talked about responsibilities, rights, and entitlements. Now, by the way, this might be better placed in the second category of societal responsibilities. I kind of play with that. In the end, we need to take individual responsibility for how we conduct ourselves, how we behave in society, but that's an individual thing. Okay? Without taking responsibility seriously, rights don't mean a whole lot, because the accretion of rights then comes at the expense of others. Okay? And then I talked about entitlements as well, which are neither responsibilities nor rights. They are something that's expanded significantly in our society. And then last in this category, I talked about Peter Mail's wonderful book, Acquired Taste. So I had a long conversation, pardon me, with one of my clients day before yesterday, I believe it was, or maybe it was yesterday. I don't remember now. And we talked, at least for part of the conversation, about how to enjoy life. And I told them I'm going to send them a copy of Acquired Tastes because, you know, we used to talk about having good taste. It was someone who had a sense of beauty, a sense of how to deport oneself in a way that focused on other people's well-being more than one's own. Someone who has, who knows etiquette and has good manners, right? And it would be wonderful us to return to this idea of working to acquire good taste. So, Peter Mail's books. Peter Mail is best known for his first book, which was a huge bestseller called A Year in Provence. Peter Mail was an Englishman who, with his wife, moved to the south of France, and that his first book was about that move. And then he continued to write books about France and other sort of related subjects. So the key to his book is that rather than indulging in novelty, whatever is novel wears off, and then on to the next thing that's novel, cultivate a taste for timeless things, okay? Like champagne, truffles, caviar, just to use the gastronomic examples. Okay, so that was the first category. In the second category, which is our sort of looking out into society. So I did a show on jury duty not long after I actually ended up not serving on the jury, but I went to what's called the voir dire, which is the jury selection process. It was quite fascinating and in some ways disappointing, because the vast majority of people were trying to get out of having to serve on jury duty. And I looked at it the opposite way, which is, in our republic, we have certain responsibilities, really in this case, duties, as citizens of our republic. And one of them is to serve on a jury. And so I was absolutely willing to serve. But unfortunately, it was a sophisticated business matter, and one of the parties did not want anybody who had knowledge of how sophisticated business matters work. And all of us who were very sort of deep into business, we all got excused by that same lawyer. So I didn't get to serve, but that's okay. And then I talked about renewing societal institutions. So I think there's a rather broad feeling in society today that our institutions have let us down. And I think it's not without, it's not without good reason. Oh, I dropped my coaster. Have I showed you my coaster before? So this is made from teak wood that was part of the deck of the USS Missouri, which was a battleship that was sunk in the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7th, 1941. So I got several of these coasters to remember that tragic day. This is one of the best cocktails I've had on the show. If you're not getting the recipes, I encourage you to join my email list so you get them. But also, the cocktail recipes are in the show notes after an episode posts on YouTube. So Wow. Try this one out. Okay. I think the tendency is for us to feel that institutions fail us. And that is partly true. Institutions do fail us, but we also fail institutions. So, as citizens of our republic, we have a responsibility to see to it that our institutions are upheld. And that can be a lot of work. Now, we can't all be responsible for upholding all institutions. But I think each of us should choose one or two in which we're going to be involved and act in that institution in the way that we would have the institution viewed by people in general. So when I say institutions, I mean that fairly broadly. So I don't mean institution in the sense of a particular house of worship, for example. Although that's probably how we would impact the institution of religion, for example. But we've got religion, government, business, charitable institutions. There are others out there. And so I think it behooves each of us to be involved in a couple of them. So, for example, for me, I'm involved in business. I have my own company, and my focus when I'm doing business is to handle situations in a way that I feel brings credit to business as an institution. So treating people with decency, not engaging in dishonesty, complying with laws, et cetera, et cetera. So I work within my business. I work to create an atmosphere where people feel like they're involved in something valuable. Okay, so that's one institution that I seek to uphold in its best context. And then I also so I'm the chairman of the board of a small nonprofit, and the same thing there. So I look to, in my role as kind of the person who is overseeing things at a very high level, see to it that whatever the organization is doing is credible, is valuable. We're not wasting donors' resources. The people who come in contact with the organization, they get something out of it that is very worthwhile. Okay, so institutions. Then I talked about biblical commandments, right? So the commandments endure because they describe and they deal with human nature as it is, not as we might wish it to be, right? There's a saying about if wishing and hoping were, I don't know, whatever it is, right? It's all good and well, but human nature hasn't changed for millennia. And that's, I think, one of the true values of understanding biblical morality is it's dealing with human nature as it is from a timeless perspective. And then finally, in this category, I talked about just the broad category of duty. To whom do we have? Why is duty important? To whom do we have duty? How should we exercise it? And I think this is important for both men and women, but in particular for men who agree with me that the essential male aspect is the pursuit of virtue. So duty is in many ways the action side of that pursuit. Okay, so if something is our duty, then we do it. If it's annoying or painful or takes time, okay, so it does. But since it's our duty, we do it. All right. The third category is great books. And I think this is actually the longest category. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I did 11 shows out of 26 or 20, 25 or 26. So almost half of them were on great books, and that's by design. I think that for us to read and understand the great works of the Western canon is to understand the foundation on which our civilization rests. And it is to teach us a great deal about human nature, about values, about how to effectively interact with other people, and how to keep our minds active, get enjoyment from something other than, scrolling our phones and that sort of thing. So the books that I covered, I'm just going to kind of run through them. So Ivanhoe, the great adventure novel by Sir Walter Scott. One of its themes, civilization advances when honor restrains power, not when power replaces honor. It's a wonderful book. Oh my gosh. And the movie is terrific too. Okay. The Federalist Papers, which talks about why the original 13 states of the United States should ratify the Constitution. So I think the central, I love this central idea. But by the way, I did use my assistant ChatGPT to come up with some of these notes, and ChatGPT came up with this, and I think it's brilliant. Not that ChatGPT is sentient, because it's not, but liberty survives through structures that assume human weakness. That is the undergirding of our republic and the Constitution that was written by the brilliant men who wrote it. Okay. Then next, I talked about three of the great 19th century novelists: Jane Austen, George Eliot, and Thomas Hardy. And one of the ideas, manners reveals morality, and often small choices shape destinies more than grand declarations. And indeed, that if you read any of those authors' great works, whether it's Northanger Abbey, which is one of Jane Austen's lesser known works, but one of my favorites, or The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, or Tess of the Dubervilles by Hardy, I think you will see it's really the small things that really drive the stories. Okay, I talked about Mark Twain. So if you're not an aficionado of great books, Mark Twain is your road in. I don't know, in my day, when you went to junior high, high school, we read books like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn in particular is considered one of the greatest books ever written by an American author. So Mark Twain had an ability to use humor to make truth accessible. And that's one of the reasons why I love Mark Twain. I think I've read all of his books except for one. I still have to read Innocents Abroad. It's sitting on my little table in my bedroom waiting to be read this year. Okay. And then this is not, of course, a book, but I talked about the 36 dramatic situations. And just to give you an idea, with one of the, I think, fun things about reading fiction is to see the many, many different ways that the same essential plot can be told and retold and retold. I talked about The Red Badge of Courage, Stephen Crane's amazing short book set in the American Civil War. And again, one of the central ideas there is courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the decision not to fall prey to fear. So that was an early lesson that I had to learn. Okay, then I talked about the elements of style, which is both a great book. It's written by, well, the current edition, I think, is written by Strunk and White. Strunk was the original author, trying to remember his first name. White is E.B. White, the great author and poet. And it really makes the case that clear writing is evidence of clear thinking, and sloppy language oftentimes also hides sloppy ideas. I talked about the outstanding sort of existentialist play, Waiting for Godot. Meaning doesn't arrive, it's created by how we wait and what we do while we're waiting. I'm hoping this year to get an opportunity to see Waiting for Godot on the stage. It's an amazing play to read, and I hope I get to see it, like I said, on the stage. And then I talked about Aesop's fables, some of which you probably have read as a children, or maybe you read them to your children as an adult. They're simple stories that endure because they have core moral principles built into them, like the tortoise and the hare, and the fox and the sour grapes. And these are wonderful, wonderful stories. So valuable for children because they're very memorable, and they're a way of inculcating our values without clubbing someone over the head. And then finally, this was the show, I think, just 2 weeks ago. I talked about Poor Richard's Almanac, Benjamin Franklin's wonderful contribution to early American knowledge. And while, you know, the sections about weather and that kind of stuff obviously don't mean anything now, the interspersing of ideas that were conveyed humorously is really what is enduring about Poor Richard's Almanac. And you'll notice that I'm obviously a big fan of this idea of conveying ideas, especially important ideas, through humor, through charm, through even enjoyable plays like Waiting for Godot. So that's not to say I want to be, you know, propagandistic in that sense, but the way we present people with ideas, I think, is as important as the ideas themselves. So that's category number 3, great books. And then the fourth category, like I said, is kind of the miscellaneous category, but it has a bit of a literary, fun, entertainment. I don't know. I didn't know what to call the category, so I just called it fun. So I talked about film noir, one of my great, great loves. In I think it was early December, my longtime producing partner, who I mentioned earlier in the show, Rick, and I got to go to a wonderful theater down in El Segundo called the Old Time Music Hall, and we saw Kiss Me Deadly, I believe it was, on the big screen. While I'll watch, you know, film noir on a small computer screen, on a big computer screen, there is nothing like seeing it in a movie theater with an audience on a big screen. You know, film noir reminds us that moral compromise rarely announces itself. It comes in the dark, foggy night. and she whispers to us, right? That's the femme fatale, right? And we don't even see her coming. And then I also talked about Downton Abbey, perhaps my favorite television show of all time. It's certainly up there with Friends, and yeah, those are probably the well, Friends, Hogan's Heroes, yeah, Friends, and Downton Abbey. Those are the three shows that when I just watch them over and over again. So what I like most about Downton Abbey is, first of all, how it presents relationships of power and servitude, uh, relationships uh, of need, relationships of desire, how it presents accountability, forgiveness, so many aspects. And I mean, the acting, of course, is brilliant. The writing is also extraordinary. It's a beautiful, beautiful show set in the English countryside. The costumes are beautiful. The language is beautiful. And the way the show was on for, gosh, I want to say 8 seasons, I think. Watching the characters grow is one of my favorite parts of Downton Abbey. And then finally, I talked about Greek dramas. So this could have fit into the great books category, because most of the Greek dramas that are extant are part of the Western canon. However, in this case, I wanted to emphasize seeing Greek dramas in a theater. If you get enough opportunities to see, I don't know, the Trajan Women, Agamemnon, Lysisteria, any of the, whether it's Sophocles, whether it's Aeschylus, who I think in the episode I called Aeschylus, I think it can be either way, Euripides. If you get an opportunity to see one of their plays performed, go. That's all I can tell you. The essential nature of Greek drama is very impactful, and it's so different from the elaborate productions that are so much of what passes for theater these days, whether it's shows like The Lion King or whatever the current I think Wicked or whatever. These musicals have large budgets, high production value, etc. And that's fine. I mean, there's a place for spectacle. But last month, I went and saw the Nutcracker twice. Only see it once. The LA Ballet does a great job, and I saw it at Royce Hall at UCLA, a matinee, and it was lovely. There were a lot of parents there with children, small children, who sat in rapt attention, watching what was wonderful dancing and very, very simple sets and props, very minimalist. That's one of the aspects of ballet that I like, is it's not particularly elaborate in most cases. But I had a business associate who I found out wanted to badly to see the Nutcracker, and so I took her to see it actually last Saturday night at the Dolby, which is an amazing theater in Hollywood, on Hollywood Boulevard and Highland. And in this performance, there was a live orchestra to enhance it, and it was the same simple presentation but the live music added an element to it that wasn't there when I saw it the first time. And it was mostly an adult audience that was very, very appreciative of the quality of the performance. And so, you know, ballet in a way again, it's a simpler form of performance, and Greek drama is perhaps even a little simpler than that. And yet, when you strip away so much of the production, the sets and all the elaborate costumes and all that kind of stuff, you get down to the essential nature of, in the case of Greek dramas, you get down to the essential nature of why going to the theater is such a wonderful experience. And that is that the performers have an opportunity to convey a message to us that will give us food for thought and hopefully make our lives better. And by coincidence, that is why I do Jiggers Place. I hope to give you some ideas, some food for thought that in the end will make your life better. So welcome to 2026. If you're a new viewer of Jiggers' Place, welcome to Jiggers' Place. And I hope I will see you again in the coming weeks and months. If you have thoughts, questions, comments, criticisms, all of my social media links will be in the show notes after this episode posts on YouTube. Feel free to be in touch. If you have an idea for a show that you'd like to see me do, hey, let me know. Always open to great ideas. And so thank you so much for joining me, sharing a small piece of your New Year's Day with me. Looking forward to being with you in this year and wishing you a new year of good health and prosperity. Signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you're my belle. Courage at all times, my friends.